John Dudley Masters was born in Sulphur Springs, Texas, August 5, 1919. He was the son of Thomas Masters and Annie Young, my great-great-aunt, making him the first cousin of my grandmother Neva. I often find new details in my family tree, but in the case of this man, I found a fairly close relative that I never knew existed. This week we mark the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. In a family of so many who have served and continue to serve, I want to capture the spirit of the occasion by celebrating the life of my cousin, Lieutenant Dudley Masters, a fellow aviator and World War II bomber pilot. Annie Young moved with her mother and siblings to Texas in 1900 after her father died of malaria.
In the spring of 1903, 15-year-old Annie married Tom Masters. In December, Tom and Annie moved with the Youngs north to Indian Territory. Tom helped his brothers-in-law, Elmer and Andrew, move the cattle overland while the women took the train. Annie was 8 months pregnant on that trip and would have 3 children born in Lightning Ridge by 1909.
In 1910, Annie's mother Sophia died, and Tom and Annie moved back to Sulphur Springs. They apparently never came back. In fact, some of the family who grew up in Pontotoc County did not know or remember that Elmer, Andrew, and Kate even had a sister named Annie.
Dudley would be the youngest of the 3 kids born in Texas.
By 1930, the Masters family moved to the town of Falfurrias in South Texas. Dudley graduated high school in 1937, then completed 1 year of college in Austin at the University of Texas. The 1940 census shows 20-year-old Dudley living at home, working as a bookkeeper.
2 years later, Dudley volunteered for the service. In June 1942, he started the Army Air Force's Basic Flying School at Chico Army Airfield, California. He soon transitioned to twin engines at the pilot school in Marfa, Texas.
In November 1943, Dudley was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Army Air Corps. He was assigned co-pilot duties on a B-24 Liberator in the 715th Bomb Squadron, 448th Bomb Group, 8th Air Force. Dudley joined the other B-24 air crews of his group for several months' training at Wendover Field, Utah, the Army Air Corps' largest bombing range. This is the same airfield where the Enola Gay would train for the atomic bombing mission over Japan.
The air crews joined the ground crews at Sioux City Army Air Base later that year and trained until it was time to deploy to Europe. The ground crews got on ships in New York, while the air crews ferried their planes across the Atlantic.
By December 1943, the main body of all 4 squadrons arrived in Norfolk, England, at Station 146, known as Seething Field. Dudley was the co-pilot of B-24 number 42-95075. We don't have a picture of his plane, but here's a B-24 from his group just 8 planes back in sequence, probably built at the same time in the same factory.
Their first mission would be just after the New Year.
On January 11, 1944, the 8th Air Force mounted a maximum effort raid deep into Germany. As the strike force moved over the continent, weather conditions began deteriorating rapidly. A recall was sent out to all wings except those who were closing in on their targets. German fighters concentrated on the smaller force, and the ensuing 3.5-hour battle was one of the most harrowing of the war. 60 heavy bombers were lost.
One of Dudley's fellow pilots described their first mission.
First mission over Germany was to bomb the assembly factories for Messerschmitt 210 and Junkers 88 airplanes in Quakenbrück. The group ahead of us had already hit the target, and on the way back we bombed a factory near the Belgian border. Encountered heavy flak and about 15 Me-109 fighters. Had the shit shot out of us for 20 minutes and left a 3-foot hole in our wing. Hydraulic system shot out. We were in a 6-ship formation but lost one of our planes. Our gunner shot down 4 other planes. Everything happened too damn fast and I was pretty scared. The German fighter is a damn good man, but we are better and can lick him. The paper said it was the greatest air battle ever fought. We lost 59 bombers and the Germans over 100 fighters. Having bullets and shells fired at you is a very strange feeling one cannot comprehend until it actually happens. What I mean, a fellow really gets scared. If I would have had paper, I would have wiped my ass, literally. Funny, I didn't think of my past, or anything, but flying evasive action and keeping in the tightest formation. It is now the Battle of Germany instead of the Battle of Britain. Boy, they are throwing every airplane they have into it. What a thrill. What a sight. We really hit our target. There were more planes in the air than there are stars in the heavens. God help those poor Germans who started the war that we have only just begun.
The next recorded mission of Dudley's squadron was on February 6th. They hit the Nazi-occupied airbase at Giltz-Rhein, Holland, and the Paulitz oil refineries north of Hamburg.
By spring, the U.S. had persuaded Stalin to allow U.S. aircraft to operate out of bases in the Western Soviet Union. The 8th Air Force conducted a total of 7 so-called shuttle raids that summer under the code name Operation Frantic.
The first of these raids was on June 21st to hit Berlin and the synthetic oil plant at Ruhland. 145 B-17s attacked from the Soviet Union. Dudley was part of the main attack of 790 heavy bombers from England. His squadron's target was Berlin.
While dropping bombs on the target area, Dudley's plane was hit by flak and he was wounded. His B-24 was soon engulfed in flames. The crew parachuted safely over the Berlin suburbs, but were captured in the village of Schulzendorf.
Despite his injuries, Dudley was taken to the Dulag Luft at Oberrussel, a trip of over 500 kilometers. While ostensibly a collection point for Air Force personnel, the transit camp was actually an interrogation center for newly captured air crews before they are transferred to the permanent camps. Dudley was admitted to the camp's Hohemark Hospital 5 kilometers away.
Back in Texas, Tom and Annie soon received the news that Dudley had been wounded and was a prisoner of war.
Dudley's parents didn't hear anything again until November, when they received 2 pieces of mail in one day. They read a letter from Dudley first, postmarked from Germany, telling them that he was wounded and was in a hospital, and that he hoped to be placed in an internment camp with other captured Americans soon. The family was hopeful. They thought if he had survived this long that he was going to be all right. Maybe he had already been moved from a hospital to some internment camp.
The second piece of mail, however, was a telegram from the War Department notifying them that Dudley had died in the POW camp in Germany on July 3rd, just 13 days after he had been shot down.
The Army identified Dudley's remains 6 months later on January 3, 1945. He had been buried in the Russian-occupied sector of Berlin. It's not clear why he was buried so far from the POW camp. Perhaps the Germans did not want the POW cemeteries co-located with the camps. Dudley's official status was listed as shot while attempting escape. Lieutenant John Neal, The navigator on Dudley's B-24 and a fellow prisoner wrote,
Second Lieutenant Masters died in the POW camp's Hoamark Hospital 13 days after we crashed.
It's not clear whether his fatal injuries were from the bombing raid or if he had tried to escape and died of a gunshot wound. In September 1954, the British went into the Russian sector of Berlin and exhumed several of the dead heroes of the war. Our cousin was among them.
The next month, after more than 10 years in East Germany, Dudley's remains were returned to America. He was reinterred at the Glen Rest Cemetery in Kerrville, Texas, near Austin, where his mother had moved to be near her other children after Tom died. The funeral was attended by Annie and all 5 of Dudley's siblings.
The 1944 Operation Frantic was considered a costly failure that included one of the worst losses ever suffered by an American Air Force. Instead of cementing the Allied alliance, it exposed its fundamental weaknesses and ended in great American bitterness. The 448th Bombardment Group was redeployed to the United States in late June of 1945 and was officially deactivated on August 4, 1946. The group flew 262 missions from Sealing Field, losing 350 men in action.
Their history is on display at the American Air Museum, part of the Imperial War Museum, located near Cambridge, England.